Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have return guests back with me today. I have Paul and Cyan, the Zeta Connection. Let me tell you a little bit more about them. They're about evidence and they're real ET contact. That's why they're the real McCoy when it comes to contactees, and I really admire that. Paul's earliest memories of being visited by the Zetas are from 18 months old. In 1978, Paul and three friends witnessed a tic-tac type craft that was no more than 10 meters away when the Zetas showed themselves to Paul and his friends. In 2013, a craft physically landed in New South Wales and 20 people were present. Cyan's earliest memories of contact with the Zeta are from 4 years of age when she was introduced to a small boy of similar age, and then several years later, this turned out to be Paul. Both she and Paul have shared memory of onboard craft together. Both Paul and Cyan have clear conscious recall of their contact with the beings that they work with and have not needed to undergo any type of regression therapy.
Yep.
They have regular visitation by the Zetas to their home, including craft visits, which they've been able to photograph and audibly record. The Zetas have trained Paul from a very early age to engage in contact with them and enables them to work through him. In this way, the Zetas have healed many people with medically proven physical injuries and diseases. Cyan has been undergoing this training for the last 15 years in the early stages of the same process. Paul's training with the Zetas has enabled them to communicate with the information over the years that have been studied by the scientists. As such, many books have been written, co-authored by retirement ex-government communication scientists, such as A Primer for the Zeta Race and the Zeta Interviews. And Paul and Cyan's latest book, The Zeta Mind, is a short handbook for individuals who wish to learn how to safely contact extraterrestrial races. And their website is, the website is www.the-zeta-connection.com. And I want to give them a big welcome on the show. Paul and Cyan, thank you for coming back on. How are you?
Good, thanks, Robert. And we're well. I hope you're well as well.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with, I want to see what all you want to cover. I have some questions from interviews that you did, but what do you think is most important to cover? I know you wanted to talk about ET disclosure from an ET perspective. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I want to talk about that because I'm sure that you've looked on what's happening on social media in regards to disclosure. It's a fight. It's a fight socially for people to get their opinions across, people to try to work out what's going on. And in the end, the question is, does it really matter? Does it really matter if people believe that craft are from extraterrestrial races? Does it matter if people believe that ET are real? Because let's say today, disclosure happens, somebody of significance says, yes, craft, a real ET exists. And then the whole planet goes, wow, that's amazing. Tomorrow, there's no ET. You see, this is the problem. Disclosure requires the extraterrestrial races to disclose themselves to the human population. There is contact taking place between humans and ET races, but it's not a public disclosure. So the fight or the argument should not be about who's right, who's wrong, who's got contact, who doesn't have contact. It's actually all irrelevant because all that's going to happen is people will know that the ET are real, but they'll have no evidence from the side of the ET.
Yeah, and what do you think about this situation, Cyan? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. I mean, disclosure to me is irrelevant. I don't need any government, any one person, any self-professed ambassador to tell me that there are ETs out there. I already know that. Yeah. And we are well aware that there are thousands of people that know that already themselves too. We work with lots and lots of people, helping them to understand their contact that they're having. And none of those people need an official government body, whatever, to tell them that there are ET out there. They know very well already.
Because they're being contacted.
Because they've got that contact.
It's actually a little bit laughable, this whole situation. You've got millions of people that are being contacted or have been contacted in the past, And then you've got these big group of people on social media arguing about what, whether ET exists. And I'm sure that all the people that have been contacted or abducted are going, this is the craziest situation they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because I mean, and I think that this was purposely done, and you would know better about this. Like they obviously didn't choose to go through the governments for a reason. Like otherwise, the ET would have decided to go to the government and say, hey, can you disclose to your people? But they didn't do that. They're choosing to come to people like you and get their message through. Do you think it's because they trust you more, and the people are more trustable than governments?
I think that they've seen that when you tell an official body something, they'll then massage the truth. Yeah. Whereas if you individuate the information, give it out to the individuals, that information is then disseminated in a different method. And so from their perspective, when contact actually occurs on a global scale, you'll have millions of people that have already had some level of contact with extraterrestrial races. Now, yes, there are a lot of problems with the contact that has taken place. Things like screen memory technology, things like people seeing owls and clowns and other imagery. That is the ET trying to show themselves to people. People being on craft and not understanding why they're on craft. The Zetas and the other races, they're studying humans for one specific reason, to try to work out what a contact protocol would be on a global scale. You see, you and I and Cyan can sit here and go, look, let's work out what a contact protocol is. We'll pretend that we're all aliens, right? So we sit down and we discuss it. And we go, well, you know what? There's 7 or 8 billion people on the planet. What would each one of those people think was the best possible contact protocol? We don't even have that information. So we've got to go about studying the race, gaining the information, working out what a protocol is for contact.
How will the humans react?
How will they react?
What their psychological state they'll be in afterwards.
Yeah.
Are they even able to withstand the contact if they turned up and said hello? Most people would black out in the presence of one of the grey species. They would just black out.
If you talk to a contactee, when they get contacted, the Zetas or the Greys come into the room and people then basically just black out. So
is it because the energy difference? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I've heard that from Jim Sparks too. On an interview, he said that their energy is very powerful or something. Is that true?
Yeah, of course. But it's to do with your etheric body. Now, we all have a mirror image of the physical, which is an energy body and etheric body. And that etheric body can be expanded or contracted depending on what we're doing. And we do that either by intention or our breath work. So with them, they have to try to reduce the amount of energy coming from the etheric body. Now, when they move into a physical state from a craft, they've come into your house, when they move towards you, your etheric body may not be able to withstand the pressure of their etheric body. And in doing so, you'll black out. And we've seen over and over again people saying, I know something happened. I remember seeing an owl, and then all of a sudden I blacked out. Now, the imagery that people are given is to stop them from having a massive fear response. See an owl or an orb, that's another thing, see an orb, people don't feel too threatened by that. Whereas if they saw something that was terrifying, then of course they would completely shut down straight away. So, still talking about us being aliens trying to work out what a protocol is, we're now faced with all that information as well, trying to disclose our presence to beings.
So it's hard for them because they're trying to make contact in the most peaceful way possible. Yep. But let me ask you this: are there negative abductions and positive? I mean, there's obviously positive contact and then negative contact, from what I've heard, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and then I've heard there's different races of grays and MyLabs, and
Yeah.
I mean, like, what's the whole difference of the types of contact, if you could break it down?
I'll break it down, no problem. So the thing is this, we'll talk about a species, the grey species. Yeah, there's 62 specific races that work in the collective consciousness. They have beings of their own race that incarnate into the human form, and they're called hybrids. And those beings are visited by the race through their life. So if you're from one of those 62 races and you're a hybrid, you'll get contact, and it'll be fairly positive. You may not understand it when it's happening, but it'll still be positive. One of the races is not part of the collective consciousness, and they do not abide by the laws of free will. And in doing so, when they access a human, they do not ask for their permission on a higher level to access that person. And the person does have a very, very difficult time in regards to abduction with that race. They're not the only races that do it, of course. There are other beings that are working with humans, that are experimenting with humans. There's also humans that are experimenting with humans, and there's a lot of cloaking technology that's used in regards to the perception of a person, the compartmentalized psychological processes that a person may have and what they believe about themselves to be true. We know that a lot of this stuff's happened through processes such as MK Ultra, where they use the compartmentalization processes. So when we talk about disclosure, when we talk about contact, when we talk about what is contact, there's a massive array of contact, and some of it is false contact. Other of it is contact that is a person is subjected to. And the other type of contact is when a person has given some level of permission for the contact to take place, because the person has a hybrid existence. They have a symbiotic relationship between their consciousness and the spirit person that they are as well.
That's pretty interesting. Now, so you would obviously fall under the category of you're saying you're a part of there. You're possibly a hybrid, right?
Yeah, but 30% of humans are. So it's 3 in 10 people are hybrids. So it's nothing special. And the Zetas have said this. Nobody's special. You're just different. And because the moment you think you're special, your ego kicks in and it causes you all sorts of problems. So people need to get off the ego bus and start thinking about, look, you've got abilities. You should be using them to help the humanity, to help the human race. If you've got the ability as a hybrid to heal, put it into practice. If you've got the ability to give people information, put it into practice. Become the best that you can possibly be. As the Zetas always say, you are more. And they know that. And humans should know that about themselves as well.
Yeah, and there's so much I want to get into talking to you about. Like, I wanted to ask about the screen memory technology, because I know you wrote about that extensively.
Yeah.
Can you break that down a little bit, how they use the screen memory technology?
Yeah, for sure. Did you want to talk about the screen memory tech?
No, you're on a roll.
Oh, I'm on a roll. I didn't know that. So we've come across, we would say, multiple types of screen memories. And screen memory A is when you have missing time. Yeah. And you can't remember anything, but you know that you've driven from here to here. It took 5 hours. It only normally takes an hour. And something's happened. You saw an orb, and next thing you know, you can't remember anything. That's screen memory A. What you tell me what screen memory B is then?
There's the narrative.
Yeah.
Screen memory Bs are the narratives. So depending on the person's cultural upbringing and their age, they'll be given a scenario that plays out for them while something else is actually taking place. So they may be thinking they're learning to fly a craft when they're actually undergoing a procedure. Depending on the age of the person, that narrative changes, but we often see common narratives that are used, such as the craft flying, being handed a baby and asked to look after the baby.
Yep.
What other ones?
There are many.
Oh God, there's so many. But yeah, they're like a movie script that's played to the person to cover up what's actually going on.
That person could be an extraterrestrial, you see. And so what's happening is while the human mind on board the craft is being shown this narrative, this movie, the actual consciousness of the person is standing off to the side having a discussion with their own race. You see, but what is amusing is that the human wants to believe that they're flying the craft, but the reality is that they're actually extraterrestrial. They are extraterrestrial talking to their own race. I think that's much more important and more interesting. Yeah. Now, and now screen memories, which class 3 screen memories, they have a timer associated with them. Something will happen to the person, and then maybe 10, 20 years later, all of a sudden it drops. The person goes, oh my God, that happened to me. You know, and we see this all the time. So what we do is we spend a lot of time with people working through and identifying what category of screen memories people have, so that we can actually unpick the picture. Rather than doing the hypnotic regression or anything like that, it's more about working out what's the narrative and what's the real information, the factual information. It takes a lot of work to unpick that, because if you just ask, if you're going through hypnotic regression, and say you've been to MUFON and all the rest of it, and you've talked to them, you may not fully, and I mean fully, understand when you are giving the information across in an altered state, that part of that information is actually a screen memory.
Or if not all of it is a screen memory.
And so a lot of people just recant their screen memories over and over again. And to be honest, they actually believe it, and that because for them, that is their memory. They're recounting their memory. D is a different type of screen memory process. This is based around implanting, but from a hybrid perspective. You're a hybrid, we'll say, you have the ability to implant memories, but what you're doing is you're implanting knowledge to another hybrid. So you may have had an experience of humanity and you meet a hybrid. You then implant the imagery to their mind, so they don't need to go through the experience, because you give them the experience yourself. This is not known, this type of technology at this point. People sort of may have some thoughts about it, but then the last one is called the construct. And the construct is when you're placed within a normal environment, an energetic environment, and there are triggers placed around you. Say you're in your kitchen, right? And what they do is they allow actors to play specific roles, and they watch to see how you react as a human, right?
Is this an SQE? Is that what that's called?
Yeah, it can be an SQE, absolutely. And so the thing is with the SQEs is that some races can identify that it is an SQE, and so the SQEs are not used because the beings won't enter into the SQE. So what they'll do is they'll just use a construct, an energetic environment. You go through a situation and you have a response. Next thing you know, next week, the same thing happens again. And you're trying to work out, why is it that I keep going through the same, I'm cycling through this same issue in my life? And it's because you're being studied.
And why do you think they're studying certain people? Have they ever told that to you?
They study people to see their responses, because if once again, we're all aliens and we're studying humans, we want to work out a contact protocol, we need to create these situations where we learn as much as we specifically can about each of the individuals, so that when proper disclosure takes place, that we have developed a methodology to work with the person's psychological construct.
That makes so much sense. Did you just explain this perfectly as to why this is all taking place? That makes so much sense now, all of this. Like, it kind of puts everything into place. But here's what I was wondering, I think this is interesting. How are you able to get past the screen memories? Because I know, like, Daryl Sims, for example, he says he has to have the contactee or abductee tell their story backwards to get the screen memory to fade away. Now that could be old methodology or something, or maybe just a trick that he does. But like, how are you able to get past the screen memories without using hypnotic regression?
Well, because we have knowledge and experience of what a screen memory is. They are different in energy. It's like a person that is a medium able to recognize a spirit person, because a spirit person is a different energy from the medium. We're both mediums. So when we're talking to contactees and they're telling us their story, there is an energetic thread that undulates from their story. And you can work out from reading that undulation, those peaks and troughs, what's a screen memory and what isn't.
Yeah.
We don't need for people to go backwards or forwards or anything like that. And another thing is what we generally find, once we start talking to somebody, the beings that are working with them start talking to us as well. And we can then work out what's really going on with a person.
That's amazing, because you guys are like channelers too, right?
Well, not channeling as in the concept that people understand. We're actually trained what are called deep trance mediums. It took me, I don't know, 20 or 30 years to get to the point where I was able to do it correctly. The thing is with channeling is channeling is basically known as a way to just translate information through, but you're not in a heavy altered state or something. We actually are able to give ourselves over to the beings, and they can transfigure over our faces and people can see them most times, you know.
That's amazing. I heard you guys say a story in another interview that you did where you said that you guys went into an altered state and the whole environment changed, and all of a sudden you could see Zetas walking around and
That's right.
they were healing people. And I mean, did other people experience this as well? Like, does this, I mean, it sounds very amazing.
Yeah, the people experiencing the healings experienced it. So yeah, we've got one of the testimonies on our website is from one of the people that were there during that particular occasion.
It's not uncommon when if you're with us and we move into an altered state, and people that know us and that will watch this can attest to this, that the environment will change. And once the environment changes, then the capacity for you to possibly experience an extraterrestrial or see them walking through the room or a spirit person increases exponentially. It doesn't mean that it will always happen. It depends on your psychological construct, your level of fear, what you're open to. Yeah, they're not going to interfere with your free will. And so if you're in the room and they're in the room and they know that you don't want to see them, then you won't see them. That's because they will not pressure you to see them, right? Because humans can only see within a specific visual spectrum. And if they're just on the outside of that spectrum, they can easily phase into that for you to see them. That's why a lot of people, when they wake up in the middle of the night, they see an extraterrestrial, because the extraterrestrial may be outside of the normal visual range, but because they want to show themselves to the person, the contactee, the person is allowed to see them. A lot of people will also see beings from the periphery of their vision. That's really common, that you see things in the periphery of vision. Even spirit people are seen in the peripheral vision as well.
I've heard that before. I've heard a lot of people being able to see like shadow people, like out of the corner of their eye, right? Like, or spirits. That's pretty common. Now I wanted to ask you this. I thought this was really interesting. Since the Zetas are able to create these SQEs, and they're able to create a reality that almost seems like our reality. And then if you think about like when we dream, that's almost like a separate reality, right? Like, I'm just giving different examples of our life, because what I'm eventually getting to is, do we live in some kind of simulated reality or holographic reality that's also biological? I mean, this is what it seems like to me, because there's just so many things that point to us living maybe possibly in a simulated reality. What have they told you, and what have your conclusions come up with this?
I guess it comes back to, where did you come from? Okay, so before you were Robert, do you know where you came from?
No.
No. You see, you are a consciousness, And in that consciousness construct, you're observing yourself moving in an experience of matter. That matter is a molecular structure, a cellular structure. Everything around you is a molecular structure. And so everything is held together by some level of consciousness. When your body terminates, it disintegrates, and the consciousness, the observer who you are, moves back to its natural state. So in some respects, you're in a holographic environment that's held together by consciousness, but is instigated through matter.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Now, let me ask you this: like, what have spirits told you that the other side is like? And do we reincarnate? Because I know you guys are spiritual mediums as well. Like, so I wanted to ask you those questions.
You've been there.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that as well?
It really, I mean, when we've spoken to so many spirit people over the years. They all describe their own reality, and they all say that when they first pass over, they're generally passing over to an environment that they know and recognize. And a lot of people, when they pass over, don't even realize they've passed over.
Yeah.
It's they just fall asleep on the sofa and wake up on the sofa, and they're still on the sofa. Takes them a couple of days to figure out something's changed, you know.
Yeah.
That's a common story. When the deeper trance mediums are working, they're often taken to a place, and Paul's one of the people that gets taken to spirit realm on occasion. So you've actually been there.
Yeah.
I haven't actually been there, but you have.
So, you know, when my dad passed over, he'd been gone for an hour, but he spoke to me for an hour, and then the phone rang and we found out that he died an hour before. I then went with him. Yeah, I then went with him into spirit realm.
Mm-hmm.
And he was placed into what's called the healing hall. And the healing hall is where a lot of people go that have very serious and difficult transitions. And he had one. And so the healing hall, they can be in there for a couple of months or multiple months. And once they're finished in there, they can then move into the construct that they create based on what provides them the most experience and happiness. So a lot of beings and spirits that I've come across in spirit realm are creating their own reality. Yeah. And a really good movie to watch is What Dreams May Come by Robin Williams. That movie is very, very accurate in regards to what takes place in spirit realm.
I've never seen it before. Can you talk about it a little bit, or what a little bit more what goes on? Because I'm so interested in like the spirit realm and like what happens when we go, you know?
Spirit realm is in a really amazing place. I mean, it's like a holographic environment. It's able to create anything that you want via intention. With the movie, the husband and wife, she passes over and goes into spirit realm, and he's left. And then his children also pass over in an accident, and he's left by himself. And he tries to contact the wife and children in the spirit realm, and they try and reach out to him as well. He then ultimately, spoiler alert for anybody, he then ultimately goes into spirit realm and has to find them in spirit realm. So it's an old movie, but it's a very good movie.
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting. So would you say that we've reincarnated? Do you believe that we've lived past lives?
Yeah, because what happens is in spirit realm is, if you think about vibration, if you pass over now and you're sitting on your couch, you may stay within the vibration of the room, right? You are quite happy to stay with a loved one or just in your own house. And some people may class that as being an earthbound. The next thing is that you may pass over and move over into spirit realm and not stay anywhere around the earth environment. And what will happen is that there's a progression process that spirits are able to achieve, and they move through what's classed as the oversoul process. And the oversoul was explained by Silver Birch, a spirit person, as being like a diamond, and each of the facets of the diamond are an individuated consciousness. You and 100 other people could all be from the same oversoul. And so there's progression. We know from talking to the ET that above the oversoul is a place called the nexus. And a nexus is an entry and exit point to spirit realm. And that's where the celestial entities, the angelic entities, and the interdimensional entities exist. And they move in and out of spirit realm. That's why angels are able to come down through spirit realm and manifest into the physical, and people see angels and can work with angels, as they can also do that with interdimensional, non-corporeal entities.
Now, do we have guides, and why is it hard for some of us to access them? Like, it seems like if we, here's what I always think about guides. Like, it seems like I felt like if I have guides, like, and they could be the voice inside my head telling me what to do, maybe, but it seems like they're hard to access, right? And to me, it does. Like, but that I'm not psychic though, or I mean, like, well, I am a little bit. I'm working on my psychic abilities, but you know what I'm trying to say. It seems like they're hard to attain, the guides, right?
Yeah, I mean, generally most people always have somebody with them, looking after them, looking out for them, and trying to guide them in the right direction. We find generally that guide is a relative, maybe from several generations ago, and they're just there in the background helping when we need help. We only really need a guide to help us with spiritual work if we're actually doing the spiritual work. So it really depends on what a person is doing which dictates how much of a guide and what that guide may do with you. Some people are more naturally inclined to sort of knowing when a spirit person is around them, and others may struggle with it. But it always comes down to how much work have you put in to try and get yourself into the right space to be able to tell when spirit people are around.
We did a workshop a couple of months ago, and a spirit person put me into a deep trance state. Mm-hmm. And they were able to change the energy in the room and bring every person's guide through to them. Even if they weren't mediums or psychic or anything, they were still able to do it because they changed the fabric and the nature of the reality to allow people to, in some way, experience their guides. Now, each person would have experienced their own guide in their own way, but it was better than the person never having been able to experience their guide.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's better that they experience their guide that way and never at all. Because
because I see what you're saying. They got to know their guide. I'm sorry.
And
it was like an introduction.
It was an introduction. So now that you've met your guide, you know what they look like. You may have got their name.
You can work towards building a relationship with them now.
Nobody. I didn't tell you anything about your guide. The guide introduced themselves to you themselves. That was your experience, right? And that's why now you'd be able to go, I know my guide exists. And so I'm going to talk to them. Hello, how are you today? I know that I can't hear you, but I know that you can hear me. And then, of course, your intuitive processes, guides and spirits and loved ones speak to us through our intuition. And they drive and guide us through our intuition. And as Cyan said, you may not need a guide specifically. You may just have a loved one who is guiding you. But depends on what sort of work you do, will depend on what sort of guides that you have.
That's pretty amazing. Now, I want to go back to the ET stuff. I have a couple more questions. And it has to do with what we think of as the hybridization program, because I think you guys have, from what I've heard in other interviews, it seems like you guys have a little bit different perspective. And forgive me if I'm wrong about that. I'm not sure about the hybridization program. Like, do you feel that these mothers well, let's put it this way. It seems like from documentaries and stuff, and I can't attest to it for sure, but it seems like women have gotten pregnant and lost babies, lost fetuses, that they've said that they've been pregnant, they've lost them, and they've also had abduction experiences. So they've attributed this to the phenomena. And then, and then even Cyan said earlier that when you were talking about the screen memories, that they'll have someone hold a baby on the craft, and it's usually like a weird looking hybrid type baby. is this all the hybridization program, and is it really going on, or what's up with that whole situation?
You've got multiple different things going on, and it really depends on who the person is, which determines what's going on for them. You know, it is a screen memory process that's used with a lot of people. It is definitely a common narrative. However, there are also a lot of abductions going on that are resulting in hybrid babies, and there's also consented egg collection from the hybrid humans to create babies that live off planet. So it's a whole combination of different things going on.
I think the problem is that when people talk about extraterrestrial contact, they go, look, it just must be, it must fit in this, it must be that. But we say it can be that, it can be this, it can be this, it can be this, and it can be this. And that makes up that range of contact that takes place. One person has had genetic material taken from them, or a child. Another person has acknowledged that they want to have an extraterrestrial hybrid, whereas the first person may not have wanted to do that. And so, you know, I don't think that anybody has the full picture on this. I think that a lot of people have got ideas, but if you talk to individuals that have had children or lost children in regards to ET contact, then of course, each person has their own individual story and understanding of what's taking place. I know that people go that, you know, the hybridization of the human race is about, you know, they're cloning humans, they're doing this, they're doing that. But we have to ask ourselves, if a race has the ability to do this, why would they even bother to be doing it? And so we need to ask ourselves, are they populating other planets with hybrid humans? Are they creating new races? There's a lot to this. Yeah.
Have they told you anything about this? Like, are they, because I was wondering, because like, if you think about it, if they've been creating hybrids, they've been doing it for like, maybe at least 50, 60 years. So that's a lot of hybrids, supposedly. So there has to be a planet with all these hybrids on it, right?
Yeah, there is.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And
there's a lot of people out there, Robert, that know that as well. So
I didn't know. I just wasn't sure, you know.
Yeah.
I was always wondered. I was like, well, where are all these hybrids going? You know. And then I wanted to ask you, is the astral realm? How is the astral realm differ than the etheric and the physical realm? And how is it easier? How is it easier to attain the astral realm? Because I've been trying to do that. I was wondering if you have any information on that.
Yeah, I wrote a study guide on how to astral travel. It's available on our website. And I've astral traveled for over 60 years. The astraling is about, initially, it's an energetic environment that's a mirror image of the physical initially. And so when you leave your body and you move out into real-time astral environment, you could be walking around your house, but you're walking around the energetic environment of the house. Dimensionally, there's about 11 different dimensions that we know of. Of course, nobody can definitively say there are not 11 or there are 45 or whatever, because we don't understand what the nature or the fabric of true consciousness is. And because of that, any individuated frequency or variation of that means that that could also be a dimension or a reality. So when we leave our bodies and we move into these astral spaces, we can then move into every thought that a person's ever had. So we look at the astral realm as being a cognitive collection of all information and all thoughts that have ever taken place. And in doing so, when you go into those realms, those different thought patterns, you're able to experience all the things that a person has thought and experienced themselves across the whole range of the species of humanity. Every thought that's ever taken place exists in the astral fabric. And so knowing that, we can move through all of those ranges. And then, of course, if we increase our vibration in the astral, we can then move up or into other spaces and other dimensional aspects. And we can even move into different races. Now, not non-physical races generally, non-corporeal states. The astral is not spirit realm. Spirit realm is a different frequency, like a radio. You just have to dial through to get through into spirit realm. But when we talk about the astral and spirit realm, we can think about the ocean. If the top of the ocean is, the surface is spirit realm, and the bottom of the ocean, where the sand is the real-time astral environment, we've got a graduated frequency all the way through that we can work through, experience ourselves in as our own consciousness as we move through all of those spaces.
That's so amazing. And that was a very interesting explanation. That really explained to me very well, and it makes better sense, because I was always wondered what was the difference between the astral realm and the spirit realm, because people say there's different places you can go to in the astral realm. They say you can go to, I've heard Robert Bruce, he said that you can go to astral hospitals if you need help. And is this all true stuff, like that there's different places you can visit in the astral realm?
You know what? You just said that, and because you said that, it now exists in the astral. Do you see how it works? Everything that everybody ever thinks exists forever. And so
it's like the Akashic records, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm trying, and this is a big one. I think this is really important. And do contact experiences happen in the astral?
They can do, but they can also be somebody else's experience.
So would you like to clarify that?
I'll let you clarify.
All right. So a person's asleep and they move out of their body and then they experience being contacted. But what they could be doing is moving into somebody else's experience of being contacted. That's the first one.
I've had that happen.
Science had that. The other one is that you can move into the astral and you could meet an entity in that is actually transitioning through the astral, moving in the astral or whatever. The other one is, and you see how complicated this is, you may be having work done on you via your etheric body. That means your etheric body is lifted in frequency, has moved into real-time astral space. The beings have also moved into the real-time astral space and are working with implants with a person. And those implants will generate healing or mechanisms down into the physical body of the person who's in the physical state of sleep. So it's not always just one thing. And I think that's what I really want to say to people today, and generally when we talk, try and have an open mind about what is the possibility, because when we become dogmatic about something, then we shut off the ability for us to have a very flexible mind about what possibility. And the extraterrestrials know that we do find a lot of comfort in familiarity, but they also need to be able to work with us in various methods, in various ways. So just because we see a light in the sky doesn't mean that that's going to be the only level of contact that we have. Yeah. And just because we might say do CE5 and see a light in the sky doesn't mean that in the future that our contact may not move through into a different state. People need to be aware that when we, or when they are doing CE5 or any type of protocol of consciousness, that they're alerting the beings to their own presence. Those beings may then at some point in time wish to move into a closer relationship with them.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you just brought up another point that I just wanted to discuss before we, which is CE5. What would you say? Because I'd like to try to see if I could have contact, or I don't know how. I've been more focused on the out of body stuff. I've been really trying to have an out of body experience, but I'd like to see if I could make contact as well. what's the best CE5 method or way to put yourself in the you probably get what I'm
Well,
trying to say.
in the book I wrote, The Zeta Mind, there's actually a methodology for proper contact. You see, it's okay to go into meditative states, to move up in consciousness, contact a craft, that sort of thing. But what people should think about is, I want an interactive relationship with these beings. But to do that, you need to shift energetically yourself. You need to meditate. You need to find stillness. You need to create a very clear mind in regards to, imagine you as an ET wanting to talk to a human. You telepathically connect to them, and all you see is a vortex of just information. That's not what they want. They want to find stillness, and in the stillness, they speak to you. Silver Birch, once again, we'll go back to spiritual concepts. Silver Birch said, and talking about humanity, the activity of your world is the silence of ours. And the activity of their world is the silence of humanity. And if we understand that they can only work in stillness and silence, that we then create better opportunity for ourselves to provide proper contact.
That's so interesting. And this goes along with it. What would you say that because that we have to put ourselves in a elated state of consciousness, and we have to be maybe vibrating at a higher rate, and our frequency has to be higher to have contact? But does that mean that the ETs would be technically like closer to the source or God because their consciousness is already at that level, or their frequency is already always at that level? Does that make them closer to what we would call the creator of all?
It's interesting. That's a big question, Robert, more than you probably realize. So the thing is, you can be, you say today you meditate and you move through into a beautiful, really nice space. You're in a theta state. You've elevated your frequency. You've forgot about all the cares of the world. Are you closer to source? Well, the thing is you are source. You're just closer to yourself.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, because it's like how you explained earlier about the holographic universe. We're all everything's experience and everything, right? Or
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it like you do. Like I'm trying to. I think I get what you're saying is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, there's a lot to this. Let's imagine in the very beginning, before there was any matter, there was just void, the opposite of matter. Consciousness deciding that, although it knew everything that could possibly ever happen, every permeation of consciousness, every aspect, the only way that you could possibly learn would be to put yourself into denial, to create an opposite environment of what you currently exist in. And then in that denial, create a faceted environment for individuated consciousness. As each of those individuated consciousness experience something, it blends automatically back to source. If you have the ability to be source consciousness, you have the ability to be placed into yourself into denial. And that's where source gets its experiences from.
So it goes back to also this too, like we can probably manifest basically almost whatever we want in this life. I mean, this makes, like, we can create our own reality to an extent, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
we are source, right?
Yeah, and you already are creating your own reality. People go, this planet is hell. Well, yeah, it can be, but it can also be a heaven on earth, can't it? It can be whatever you make it. But I think, these are really complicated conversations. That's the problem. What do we worry about? What are some of the things that cause us to become upset? What do we buy into when we're talking to people? How do we interact with them? Do they give us an attachment? Now, that's a big area as well, attachments. when we're talking to people, we're in an exchange of energy with a person. Are we allowing them to interfere with us on a level that we don't understand? When we're interacting with beings, are they also interacting with us and in a way that we don't understand as well?
Yeah, that's interesting. And this all takes a play on this all determines what our reality is, right?
Absolutely, always.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, this is amazing. I don't have any other questions. If you guys want to tell everybody where they can find you, your website, your books, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And thank you, by the way.
That's okay, Robert. We really like talking to you. It's great. You're always so interesting.
Good questions.
Good questions.
Yeah, we tried to put as much stuff as we can on our website. So I think you gave the address earlier on. I'm too scared to try and say
the-zeta-connection.com.
Yeah. So all of the books, the publications are available on there.
And there are free books on there as well.
2 of them are free downloads. That's right, PDF downloads. We've got testimonials on there for the healings that have taken place over the years.
If people want to contact us,
our contact details are on there as well. We run free training sessions once a fortnight. Those details are on there as well. We occasionally run in-person events. We're going to be down hopefully in Sydney in a few weeks' time. That'll be on there as well. We do a lot of stuff online with people individually and in small groups. That all information is all on the website as well. So basically,
what are we
just
currently
go to the
teaching
website.
at the moment?
Oh goodness, we're teaching trance mediumship, how to connect to your guides, how to develop relationship with spirit. We do a lot of mentoring individually for people that are already sitting as mediums and maybe have got a bit of a block that they need to get round. What don't we do? We work with people to understand their point of origin. If they feel drawn towards understanding their hybrid self, then we work with them to do that. I don't know.
So
we do so much.
So you can see there's just 1 or 2 things.
Yeah. It's all on the
awesome.
website.
I mean, I'd like to have you guys on again, and we can cover more stuff. The more I learn about you, the more I can. I mean, I know we covered a lot today, but I'm sure there's more we can cover at a different time. I'll contact you. I'd like to have you. We can do it again.
Okay, that's great.
No problem.
All right. Thank you. I'll send you a link when I post it.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.